Hello and welcome to a brand new special episode of Dino, only on RiotRadio.ca and all of our other affiliations. My name's Eldin Atkin. That first song you heard was a nice mix by Dan. Thank you, Dan. And if you didn't know, today is actually my birthday. So today we're doing a special episode of Dino for my birthday because we haven't done Dino in a long time. It's been a couple extinctions, but I haven't done it in a long time, and there's some really cool things I want to talk about. So to get us into it, we're going to jump in. We're going to talk about the chonkiest whale that ever lived, Perucetus. So we should have a picture, I think. I look up. We're going to get a nice little picture of that. And the wild thing with Perucetus is all that stuff in white that's highlighted, that's all we have for it. We don't have the head. We don't have anything else. We've got the ribs, partially like some vertebrae, and if you notice, there's like that little at the back end of it, that little flipper, that little fluke thingy. We got that. So that's really all we have for Perucetus. But what makes this thing so wild is quite a few little fun facts I have written down here, which I'm going to attempt to read through the head. So it's possibly the heaviest mammal or sea creature to have ever lived. The possibility of it is it's 85 to 34 tons, while the blue whale is about 72 to 180 tons. So you picture the blue whale and Perucetus as well, to kind of show the size difference. The blue whale is longer, possibly, probably, but Perucetus is probably heavier. And it's kind of tough to tell how big it could have been. So without the head and the teeth of Perucetus or Perucetus Colossus, it's hard to understand what it ate and how it could have gotten so big, because you have to kind of know what it ate. Some paleontologists believe that it's not out of this world to believe that it was heavier than a blue whale. But the issue is, again, without the teeth and without knowing what it ate, you kind of can't tell. We can't say it's going to be this giant thing and then not know what it ate. So what we found was the 13 vertebrae, a few ribs, and that little flipper at the back of it. Now, it's thought to have lived 39 million years ago during the Eocene age. Eocene's kind of when whales and other mammals got a little funky. They were still playing around, still testing the waters to see what they could have done. As I said, it's thought to be shorter. So picture like a manatee. That's what the thought is. Picture a manatee, big and chonky, but no, like a little head, like a little baby. Like when you drew a whale as a child, or when you drew like a horse or any kind of animal as a child, and you get a big body and like a little head, picture that. Now, it took paleontologists 10 years to get the fossils out of the ground, and they were taken from like a really well-known spot in Peru that's been known for its marine reptiles and mammals. So, Perucetus, Peru whale, and then Colossus means like big or like Colossus. Really cool. Now, you might wonder, why do we think it was so heavy? We only have 13 vertebrae and a few ribs. Well, it suffered, or at least it had, these really cool things. So it had osteochlorosis, which the definition of osteochlorosis refers to an abnormal hardening of bone tissue, which is due to decreased bone respiration, and increased bone formation. Basically, the bones were really, really thick. When you look at our bones or bird bones, they're all different, right? Bird bones are hollow. Our bones aren't super hollow, but they have places for marrow. This thing had like solid bones. It also had this other thing called pachyostosis, which is a non-pathological condition in vertebrate animals in which the bones experience a thickening generally caused by extra layers of lamellar bone. Often occurs with the bone densification, which is osteochlorosis, reducing inner cavity size, or inner cavities period. So basically, picture your bones and fill them with cement. And then take the bone on the outside and layer it with like big pieces of other bone. And you basically have this armored skeleton, which it makes sense in some animals. Like you look at ankylosaurs, they're dinosaurs. They can be bigger. Okay, that makes sense. And then you look at whales, and the really strange thing is, when you're a whale, you live in the water. It means you can get bigger, but if your bones are heavier, you can't rise to the surface nearly as fast. Most whales, actually all whales, all mammals, breathe air. We need oxygen. So to have this chonky, massive whale that is too large to surface doesn't really make a lot of sense. So the issue is, we know it was really thick. We know it was probably really heavy. Again, close. Well, the estimate is 85 to 340 tons, which that's like 50 cars, or even more than that, actually. So the thought is that it was probably a bottom feeder, not like a catfish or a carp where they would feed at the very bottom. Again, picture a manatee, picture a dugong, picture something that's like eating seagrass and eating mollusks. It's kind of like a walrus, right? They're on the seafloor eating, but a shallow seafloor. You couldn't have something this big without having the ability to get to the surface easier. Because again, if you're diving deep, like a sperm whale or any of those other whales that dive deep for food, you're going to drown. if you're going to drown, then you're not going to survive to make babies, and that's the whole point of evolution. And the whole point of life as an animal is to eat, make babies, and make sure they survive. So that's kind of the thought. Perucetus is actually really cool. I think it's amazing. I think it's a really cool thing to see this one-off whale. The last thing I'll say is it's strange to see this in the wild, as I said, because most whales who are deep-sea divers, almost all whales are deep-sea divers, need to be able to have that quick and easy escape up. That's why their bones are lighter for the most part. But this thing, again, it was like 9 whales stuffed into one whale's body. So it's like, I don't know if that would work much. There's all kinds of other information about Perucetus out there. I took from a couple articles. I didn't cite my sources because I'm not writing an essay, unfortunately. And I kind of just picked what I liked and what I thought was really cool. There's a lot more to be said, and there's a lot of people who should be credited for all this stuff. So check it out. Perucetus Colossus. Look it up online. There's all kinds of really cool things, really cool theories. The list goes on. Now, it's an interesting episode of Dino because normally we'd have a music break. But today, we're trying to do this new thing where I'm just going to keep going. So we're going to jump into our next topic. And you might say, Eldin, these topics are kind of disjointed, but I'm picking what I like and what kind of was new in the last year of paleontology. So this next one is really cool. So, supposed surplus killing in prehistoric predators. You might think, what's surplus killing? Well, I'm going to tell you what surplus killing is. Surplus killing, also known as excessive killing, henhouse syndrome, or overkill, is a common behavior exhibited by predators nowadays in which they kill more prey than they can immediately eat, and they either cache or abandon the remainder. So basically think of this, right? You're a pack of wolves, middle of winter. You're starving. You stumble upon a herd of deer. You know that 3 deer, maybe even 1 deer, it's going to keep you. It's going to keep everyone happy and hungry. But the wolves go in and just take care of all 8 of them. So now there's 8 deer dead. Those 8 deer, you're not going to eat all of them. You can't eat all of them. And wolves aren't going to bring them back to a den. It's the middle of winter. You're just going to eat and keep moving. So surplus killing is this really weird thing we see in predators nowadays, especially in even like man-eaters, because man-eaters will go in and they fall into a house, and all of a sudden this bear is just going to eat everyone in the house. It doesn't want to eat everybody, but it's going to kill and eat everybody. So the thought is that saber-toothed tigers, which we have a picture of a saber-toothed tiger, the classic saber-toothed tiger, which has the really, again, saber teeth, were wasteful predators because they couldn't eat properly because of those like saber teeth. You couldn't get your teeth on it. You couldn't nearly do as much. And when you have teeth that are so evolved and specialized to do one thing, saber-toothed tiger's teeth we think are made for just a killing blow, you can't eat nearly as much in one go. So you kill a couple animals, surplus killing, and that allows you to have multiple meals of what you can actually eat. Then came along Xenosmilus, which is a smilodon in itself, but not nearly as long teeth. Actually, it could also be a machiodont, or machiodontid, another type of dirk-toothed cat. Now these ones, the picture we have is a skeleton, and you can see the teeth are much smaller than saber-tooth. They're much more refined, still made for a killing blow. But after a recent as in last year, we kind of figured out that there's a bone bed in, I think it was Central America or like the south of North America. Bone beds are basically large areas where you find lots of fossils. We found Xenosmilus fossils and bones of their prey. And now the bones were so well defleshed. Now defleshing, it's pretty self-explanatory, but it's just taking meat off the bone. Tigers, lions, most big cats would have that like really rough tongue and like teeth made for taking meat off, it makes sense. We didn't think they could do it. But all these bones show that Xenosmilus had gone in, defleshed super well, like modern day tigers and lions, and actually let it get its full meal and leave very little for scavengers, which kind of blows all this out of the water. We thought that, like, things like Dino, which is a very, very old cat that preyed on early humans, would possibly eat lots of humans in one, or at least take out a couple humans in one go and then stash them in trees. Surplus killing. And then we thought Sabretooth would do surplus killing because they just couldn't eat that much in one go. And then Xenosmilus comes in and says, actually, I'm custom made for this. I can happily deflesh and just say, hey, I'm going to eat it all and have no problem. So that's a really cool thing. I thought that kind of blows open the doors for a rethink of how predators in the past actually preyed on animals, especially the big cats, because the big cats are so widely known, which I thought was really cool. And our kind of last topic before just some upcoming news for shows is ground sloths, what if? And I kind of labeled all these as like what I was writing them down. So recently, as of a couple months ago, I follow a couple of these people on Instagram, and unfortunately I couldn't find the account that I actually saw this news from, but it was basically a big paleo gathering in the States that was talking about ground sloths and kind of what if they filled different niches than they did, or that they could have done. So like, we talk about ground sloths. What's a ground sloth? Megatherium, well-known ground sloth. Big sloths, walked on their knuckles. They were carnivores, or probably actually omnivores. When you think of sloths, actually I think of a picture of we might have a picture of a Jefferson's ground sloth, which it's a big hulking animal. Like, this thing was probably a super scavenger. It could just go onto a carcass and say like, hey, I'm bigger than you, this is mine. And when you think about it, like, Megatherium was 6 meters long and about 4 meters tall, and from South America. South America didn't have anything that big. Like, this thing would just show up and say, hey, I'm in charge now, go away. Then we had like Hapalops, which was the smallest that we've recently had, which was about 1 meter long and 2 meters at the shoulder. And that was a tree-dwelling South American sloth, but still looking like not nowadays sloths, because nowadays sloths, which we have a couple pictures of nowadays sloths, very goofy, very lax. They grow moss. They're old. They're slow. They don't do much. They can swim, but that's about it. Then we have like Megalonyx, which is the Jefferson's ground sloth, 3 meters long and standing about 2 meters at the shoulder, I guess when it stands up properly. North and Central America. All these sloths are very well spread out as well. So then we have Eremotherium, which is the Pan-American ground sloth, 6 meters and standing about 4 meters tall. It's very similar to Megatherium in size, but a little different. I think Megatherium was stockier and wider, while Eremotherium was kind of more thinner and looked more like a sloth. Some other big names is Mylodon, which is 3 meters long and 2 meters tall, so almost as taller than I am, but not by much, was from South America. Paramylodon, which is about 5 meters long and 2 meters tall. That was from Canada, Guatemala, Mexico, and the US. We have 2 more to go at least 2 more special ones. Then there's Nothrotheriops, or also called the Shasta ground sloth, which was 2.5 meters long and about 3 meters tall, or about 2 meters tall, from the States and Mexico. So this one's getting smaller, right? This one's smaller. I couldn't fist fight it, but it's as tall as I am. Then you get some weird ones with the aquatic sloths. The aquatic sloths fill this weird niche where they're basically seals, where they go, like, they swim in the water, they eat seagrass. And that's the thought where, okay, we know ground sloths burrowed. What if we had a bunch of, meter tall ground sloths that were like meerkats? What if they had these big burrows, they did all these meerkat-like things? They could fill that role. There was no meerkats in South America, or North America for that matter. They could fill that role. What if they filled groundhog roles? And we had, sloths that were like 3 feet that were groundhog-like. And the thought's kind of terrifying because, like, I don't like groundhogs anyways, but once you have ground sloths popping out with these little scythe claws and like just ready to wreck your day, you don't want that. I think it's a really cool thing to think, though, like, what if? What if these ground sloths evolved? If they can swim and they dig, why couldn't they be like groundhogs? Why couldn't they be like meerkats? Why couldn't they be, like modern-day true kangaroos? Like, there's so many really cool things about it, so I thought that was really interesting. Obviously, there's not a ton of talk about that because it was recent, like really recent, and there's not a ton of information about it because it's more speculation. But That's kind of the cool thing about ground sloths. My last thing I want to talk about is just new shows and movies. Now, this is kind of a personal thing because I love all kinds of dino and ancient prehistoric mammal, any kind of movies, TV shows, you name it, I love it. Documentary wise, there's been we've been spoiled so much. So we're gonna hopefully get, I say hopefully, but it's gonna be interesting. There's a new Jurassic World coming out. Well, at least it's not coming out yet. It's being created. The director is going to be David Cope, who was one of the co-writers for Lost World, which is the second Jurassic Park movie, which is actually one of my favorites. I really enjoyed the second one. You got T-Rexes, you got raptors, you got Stegosaurus, Parasaurolophus, you have all kinds of really cool dinosaurs in that one. But Jurassic World's been so disappointing. Like, the first Jurassic World movie was really good. Second one was kind of weird. It was like a horror mixed with like a weird, like, capitalism is bad. And the third one was a mess. It didn't know what it wanted to do. Monsanto's bad. Dinosaurs need to be free. That's pretty much it. It sucked. I'm sorry to say, like, I saw it in theaters. I was very disappointed. But this new one, it should be okay. I did see one post that said, like, they could clone Michael Crichton, and I'm still not going to go watch it. And that's probably where I'm at, where I'll wait for it to come out and see. I don't know what's going to happen. I just feel like the series is dead. Our Planet on Netflix is kind of cool. It starts off in the oceans. It talks about, like, prehistory in the oceans, and then moving to evolution and all kinds of, like, when animals first got into land, and then prehistoric mammals and dinosaurs and all that jazz. Personally, I couldn't get through it. I love David Attenborough, and it's narrated by not David Attenborough. I think it's Morgan Freeman. So I love Morgan Freeman. Don't get me wrong. Morgan Freeman's great. But it's just not David Attenborough. And also, some of the things they're talking about is pretty speculative. Like, oh, evolution is an arms race and the best survive. Well, that's not true. We know that evolution by default is all about randomness, and certain random traits just make sure you survive. So it's not about being the best. It's about getting lucky. Prehistoric Planet 2, I still haven't watched that yet. That one's amazing. David Attenborough narrates it. I love David Attenborough. I got a picture of him on my desk. It's a really good one. It actually talks about dinosaurs and kind of talks about behavior and how they would look and how they would act if they were like modern day animals now. Really cool. I love it. And then an animated series coming to Netflix is going to be called Jurassic Park Chaos Theory. No idea about that one yet. I'm assuming it's going to be very much like kind of an Ian Malcolm thing, where it's all about how chaos theory just runs the world and how there's no way to really control anything. It'll be interesting. But yeah, with that being said, today has been a short and sweet episode of Dino, only on rightradio.ca and all of other affiliations. My name is Eldin Atkin. It's my birthday, so hopefully you watched it. I really appreciate it. If not, I understand. Dinosaurs aren't for everybody. It is what it is. But as always, thank you very much for joining with me today, and I will catch you next time.